Echoes of the fallen. The wind howled through the forest, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, the air thick with the coming of winter. In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where the trees stood like ancient sentinels, a lone figure moved with careful precision, his every step deliberate, as if he had walked this path 1,000 times before. His name was Elias Harper, a man marked by the land itself, his rugged face etched with the passage of time, and his eyes as cold as the stone beneath his boots. Elias had been many things in his life, farmer, soldier, and hunter, but now he was a man on a mission, driven by a deep-seated need for justice. It had been 5 years since the incident, the massacre at Raven's Hollow, a small settlement hidden deep in the mountains. Elias had been away at the time, hunting in the highlands, but when he returned, the town he had once called home was nothing but ash and bloodstains. The people he had known, his friends, his family, gone. Only the smell of smoke and the whisper of the wind remained to tell the story of what had happened. The people responsible for that night were known by a single name, the Black Serpents, a ruthless band of outlaws who had terrorized the region for years. They were merciless, leaving behind a trail of death wherever they went. Elias had tracked them for months, following their signs through the woods, across rivers, and over mountains. He was close now, so close he could taste the revenge he had longed for, but there was something else, something more personal at stake. The Black Serpents had taken everything from him, his wife, Evelyn, his son, Samuel. They had been his world, his reason for living, and now they were lost to him forever. As Elias moved deeper into the forest, he thought of Evelyn. She had been the heart of their home, the light in his life that kept the darkness at bay. Samuel, their son, had been just a boy at the time, barely old enough to walk. Elias had never gotten to say goodbye to either of them. That thought, that knowledge, gnawed at him, but it also fueled the fire in his chest. He had failed them once, but he wouldn't fail them again. The Black Serpents had taken refuge in a remote canyon, surrounded by jagged cliffs and thick woods. It was the perfect hiding place for men who had made enemies of the entire region. Elias had scouted the area for days, learning their routines, their habits, until he was ready. He knew there would be no turning back once he set foot in the canyon. But that didn't matter anymore. His only goal was to bring justice, to make them pay for the lives they had stolen. The night before the raid, Elias sat by his fire, the crackling of the flames the only sound breaking the silence. His rifle was laid across his knees, its polished wood gleaming in the dim light of the fire. He thought about the man who led the Black Serpents, Vince Viper Calhoun, a man with a reputation for cruelty, known for his cold smile and brutal methods. Elias had crossed paths with him once before, and he knew that Viper wouldn't go down easily. But that didn't matter. Viper and his men were going to die tonight. As dawn broke, Elias stood, stretching his stiff limbs. He moved quietly, like a shadow across the rocky terrain. His heart beat in his chest, each thump echoing in his ears as he neared the mouth of the canyon. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows across the land, and the first light of day revealed the rough silhouettes of the outlaws' camp. Elias could see them now, their forms huddled around fires, their voices low as they planned their next move. They had no idea what was coming. Elias crouched low, his rifle in hand, and began to move toward them. He'd been planning this for months, but there was a sense of finality to this moment, a weight that pressed down on his chest. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of smoke, and the outlaws stirred, some of them glancing in Elias's direction, but it was too late. With a sharp crack, his rifle went off, the bullet finding its mark. The first man fell, his body crumpling to the ground with a sickening thud. Chaos erupted in the camp as Elias advanced with his group members, his shots precise, his movements swift. He had learned to fight with the land, to use it to his advantage. The outlaws scattered, some taking cover behind rocks, others drawing their weapons, but Elias was always one step ahead, his every action calculated. He had become something else in these woods, something darker, driven by a singular purpose. The final confrontation came when Elias faced off with Vince Calhoun himself. The leader of Black Serpent gang stood at the entrance of a cave, his hand on the hilt of his knife, his eyes narrowing as he saw Elias approaching. He sneered, recognizing the man who had become a ghost of vengeance.
"You came all this way for revenge, Elias?"
Viper said, his voice a low growl.
"You think you can kill me and make it all right?"
Elias didn't respond. He raised his rifle, taking careful aim.
"This is for my family."
The two men stood in the silence of the canyon, the wind whispering through the trees. The world seemed to hold its breath, the moment stretching on forever, until the sharp report of the rifle shattered the stillness. The bullet struck Viper in the chest, and he collapsed to the ground, his eyes wide with shock. Elias stood over him, breathing heavily, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done it. The man who had destroyed everything he loved was dead. But even in that victory, there was no peace. The emptiness of loss still echoed in his soul, a hollow ache that would never fade. As Elias turned to leave, the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its light on the blood-stained earth. The forest once again fell into silence. The winds of change had blown through the canyon, and the echoes of the fallen would carry on forever. Elias Harper had found his vengeance, but he had also found something else, something he wasn't sure he could live with. It is loss and sadness,